a nemesis. We all need one, although we don't always appreciate the fact that we do need one. Stay tuned while we talk about the importance of having a nemesis in your life. Hello and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host Greg Payne coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Welcome back in. I'm excited to have this opportunity to have another one-on-one conversation with you. Now, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, Milestone to Manhood, I really suggest you go back and give that episode a listen. You're going to learn a lot about why it's important to have these rites of passage ceremonies for our young men and young women in our lives. Now, one thing I do want to remind you is that my book, My Grandpa's Grandpa, is for sale on my website as well as on Amazon. So if you haven't picked up your own copy yet, please feel free to go over to either one of those locations, order your book, and I'll get it shipped right out to you. Today, I want to talk about why it's important that you have a nemesis in your life. Just to go back, a nemesis, the definition, is a Greek goddess of retributive justice. Now, what's great about this Greek goddess is that in the stories the Greeks would tell is that you never knew when Nemesis was going to jump up and pay you back for maybe some misdeeds that you've done in your life. The other definition that we have is that it's a formidable and usually victorious rival or opponent. What I'm talking about today, though, is not necessarily having a nemesis being a person, but having a nemesis being something that you're working on to overcome. That it's something right now that's holding you back, that's defeating you in whatever activity it is that you're trying to accomplish. That activity could be something as simple as tennis, or it could be whitewater kayaking, or it could be skiing. Whatever it is, when you're trying to increase your skill set and trying to build up and develop a skill, sometimes having that nemesis is something that really provides clarity and focus so that you can really bring your best self to that task and work on defeating it. As we get started here, I want to tell you a story about one of my nemesis, or maybe is it nemesis? If it's plural, I don't know. I'm not a Latin person or a Greek person, but this nemesis that I had lasted for a good year, maybe 2 years. I want to set the stage for you, and that is that I'm paddling on the middle of Kauai. I've gone through the first couple of rapids. The water now is pushy. It's shallow. We've got a bend in the river. It's green water. And the water, when I say shallow, I'm talking that it's anywhere between maybe 2 feet to maybe 10 inches. Sometimes it's barely enough water to float your kayak through, and certainly just enough water to float some of the raft trips that go down this river through. As we round this bend, what's coming up is a rapid called Broken Nose. Now, this is a rapid that has a couple of drops on it, and it has a nice big curler wave right at the top that will push your boat, if you allow it, right over to the right bank. And if you're lucky, you just get pushed into a very small eddy that you can then turn and come back out into the water flow. If you're unlucky, what happens is that you can get pushed sideways and you can go down over that first ledge, get flipped, tumble through, go over the second ledge upside down, getting beat up the entire time, and then having to swim out of your boat. Now, swimming out of your boat is kind of a big deal, especially in a rapid, because what that means is the protection that you have from the kayak is no longer there. You're essentially just somebody that's being bounced around by all the boulders. You're taking in mouthfuls of water. you're disoriented, and it's not a real great time to be out of your boat and swimming in the middle of one of these rapids, and especially with broken nose. With broken nose, what happened to me most of the time is that I made it through that top curler wave. I could take a stroke, I could angle my boat just right, and I could punch through that top curler wave. What would oftentimes happen to me, though, is that I would get too far to the right, make it through the first ledge, get turned a little bit, come into the second ledge with a lot of pour over water coming onto the back of my boat, and then flipping there. And so for a lot of runs early on while I was paddling this middle Ocoee River, I would just get trashed at this rapid. What ends up happening is that your entire crew has to stop for you. You have to get your boat out. You have to dump the water. You have to fix any of your gear, meaning just primarily readjust things, and then get set and then go back onto the water. It really kind of slows the trip down. It really kind of just shows that you're not quite 100% ready for that river yet. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't go on the river, and that doesn't mean that as you're working on whatever skill set that you're trying to achieve, that you give up and you don't keep moving forward. No, a nemesis is that thing that you constantly work on. And so for me, what I would do is that if I messed up and I had a swim at broken nose, that meant that when we got to the end of our run and we're going through a rapid, and it's really much more of a wave train called Hell's Hole, that I would have to skirt it. And that was my own punishment for myself for messing up on the earlier rapid. Now, Hell's Hole is great fun. It's about 3 waves. Probably the largest wave is about 8 feet tall. So it's a little bit like you're strapping on and you're going on a roller coaster that maybe is about 30 feet long. But it's wave, wave, and wave. And so it's a blast to go through. It's a blast to have fun with. But I made it my mission that I had to work on my skills to defeat this nemesis of broken nose. And so what that did was it made me really focus in on my paddle strokes. It made me focus in on where my boat was going. It made me really focus in on those skills that I needed to get through this rapid. And what I found was that it was great to have that motivation of, if I mess this thing up at broken nose, then I don't get the fun of going through Hell's Hole. And that may be something that doesn't sound quite right to you, and that's okay. But I'm a big believer in, getting rewarded for your efforts. What having this nemesis has really taught me is that basically having that named rival, having that named thing in your life creates a sense of focus. It also creates a sense of having something to push against. A lot of times I think as we get older, we don't have as many activities, as many challenges to really push ourselves against, to really make sure that we're focused like we are when we're younger. Certainly when we're, in high school and college years, those early 20s, you may be in a bowling league, you may be a softball, you may be doing something other sports related, or it may be just trying to write the best term paper you can, making sure that you try to get all your grammar correct, that you're trying to make sure that you've got concise sentences, whatever that is, so that you can please and get a great grade in that course. That's a nemesis. I think as we get older and as we become grandfathers and grandparents, that we lose having something to push against, because when we don't have that resistance, I think we miss out both emotionally as well as sometimes even physically. What is the thing that you push against? What is the thing that really drives you to be better? And if you don't have something, I want you to name it. I want you to look around. I want you to find something that can be your nemesis. The key for a nemesis, though, in the context that I'm talking about, is something that you can defeat so that you can go on to the next thing, right? That it's, okay, I've got this rapid down. Now, in my example, on another river, I've got this other rapid that gives me a hard time. And so now that becomes my nemesis. And each time I defeat a nemesis, my skill set grows, my satisfaction in life grows, my satisfaction and enjoyment in the sport that I'm choosing goes up. And that's the reward for overcoming and defeating a nemesis. It's interesting to note that with different studies that they figured out that runners average about 5 seconds per kilometer faster when they're running against a rival. The reason that is that normal competitive juices, but it's also having that, in this particular case, it's a person, having that person that you just want to beat, that you're trying to emulate, that you're trying to, get past. What I like to do is make sure that you've got something that you can push against, and it's not just a goal, but it's something that can definitely beat us. So, and here's the difference. So if I have a goal to do 100 pull-ups, it's going to be hard to do 100 pull-ups. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of strength training, a lot of effort to get to 100, but that's not the nemesis. The nemesis is going to be doing something that you enjoy, but there's a little hiccup, let's say. There's a little something to it that defeats you. And so having that nemesis is the thing that you push to do better. Maybe it's figuring out your serve and having a much better serve in tennis. Maybe it's figuring out some mountain that you're looking to hike that you get part way, and normally maybe your ankles really start killing you. Something's going on, but you set out multiple times to defeat this mountain, let's say, and you haven't been able to do it. And then finally you're able to do that mountain. And then what that does is that sets you up to go to the next mountain, the next adventure, right? Because you've learned the trick of the trade. Maybe you've got different socks. Maybe you lace up your shoes a little bit different. Maybe you take different snacks and protein bars and whatever that is. Maybe you hydrate a little bit differently. You figured out how to overcome that nemesis. And so that's, to me, the difference between goals and having a nemesis. As we wrap this up, what is a nemesis that you can really name and that you can really work on? I'd love to hear what it is that's kind of blocking you, that's kind of in your way, that's something that's holding you back, may not be the right word, but is something that can defeat you. And then at what point are you going to be able to say, okay, I've defeated that nemesis. Now I'm moving on to this next thing. Now I hate the term, but I'm going to use it. Leveling up. When's the next thing that you're going to be working on? What's the next thing that kind of defeats you when you're doing an activity? Remember, this is important to us because we need to have challenges, and we need to make sure that those challenges have names to them. And so that's why I want to implore you to find that nemesis if you don't have one. And if you do have one, use that term nemesis. So remember, name that nemesis, work hard on defeating it. I know you can do it. I know you're going to celebrate in the victory you have over it once it starts to just be kind of more of an agitation versus a nemesis. Go to the show notes, leave me a comment, let me know what your nemesis is, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help you defeat that nemesis. So, until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.